Hi everyone, I'm Jeff Smith from Flute World, and I'm here with a good friend and industry comrade, Luke Penella. Hey Luke,
Hey Jeff.
good to see you here.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming down to visit. We've actually said so many things to one another. Of it just like catching up is endless, right?
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, there's so much we have in common, and so many experiences we see daily that are shared and so forth. That's fun.
Very inspiring 48 hours and
Right.
sharing the similar experiences. As we were saying, it's interesting how we both, came into this industry kind of on the same trajectory and then split off.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
As musicians first, we both went to the same college.
Yeah.
To Berkeley College of Music.
Yeah.
And then became repairmen, and then did our own. And you did your thing, I did my thing, and
Right. Yeah. And it's every individual has a different trajectory, but we're part of this industry that we share, right? We have our piece of it, you have your piece of it, and so forth, and it's really fascinating. So we're all kind of, in one sense, kind of contributing to the health of the music industry ecosystem, right?
Absolutely, and it's an interesting thing that's like it's this vast. Well, I'm the creator of the Flute Forum, which now has 67,000 members, projected to have 100,000 members by next year, which is unbelievable to me. Yeah.
Sweet.
8 years ago, I had a sick day and I felt unproductive, so I started this group, and it's just become a behemoth. But what I was going to that is it's huge, yet it's so small, right? I mean, there's so many companies. There's such a large. I mean, I was just showing Jeff earlier today on Flute Forum from March 22nd to April 18th. There was 500,000 views on. I didn't even know there was 500,000 flute players in the world. But like I said, it's a huge thing, but it's also a very small thing. We all know each other. We do. Yeah, and we're all very passionate about what we do. And we in that we are making these instruments for players, and we're setting up this instrument for artists, right?
Well, yeah. There's no industry for us to participate in if there's no musicians,
Yeah, exactly.
right? And in one respect, we're kind of trying to fuel the next generation of musicians.
Absolutely.
We need that both for our businesses and our livelihoods, but the world at large needs that.
Absolutely.
We need people that are engaged with music making, and ideally want to take it to the next place and the next place, and keep progressing. And it's exciting to see that evolution. I've been in the industry much longer than you have, so I've maybe seen a couple extra decades of that evolution. It's a totally different place.
Oh yeah.
Than when I entered.
I'm sure it is. Yeah. We had the conversation last night too. Like I said, we chopped it up for 48 hours about. We could have talked over months worth of information, but I was telling you or whatever. When I was at Berkeley in 2002, to me the most important thing of Berkeley was, one of the things I really cherished about Berkeley was the Berkeley Library, which had 3,000 CDs, and you had like a Dewey Decimal System to get the CD. And now in my back pocket, I have way more tunes. But I think that the technology, obviously, technology helps the generations exponentially learn faster. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I do master classes all over the country, and these kids are playing at such a high level. It's so young. And I think obviously, if you want to check out James Galway and you're 11 years old, you can go on YouTube and see every,
right,
100 James Galway concerts. So that's an interesting concept of just, the way, obviously, technology has helped change not only the musicians, but also the instruments, right?
Right, absolutely, because let's just even talk about the musician progressing at, let's say, a faster clip than they did a couple generations ago. So they can do that because there's more resources available, right?
Yeah.
And so somebody that's really intent on progressing in music, can do so with fewer obstacles, let's say. One of the obstacles used to be if you wanted to study with a major player, you'd have to fly to their town, or if it was like in New York, where it's been a base for you for many years, you'd have to get on the subway and get, or take a bus or whatever, and taxi and get there. But now you could
turn on the computer.
Let's go. I want my master class or my lesson or whatever. And so there's so many more opportunities there for learning. And so there's a lot of young musicians that are making great progress, and the makers now and us as technicians, we want to deliver.
Oh, absolutely.
Actually, we want to deliver beyond their current needs, right?
Absolutely.
So we want to give them instruments that will give them some growing opportunity, what I call headroom, So,
100%.
And then the makers have to come up with progressive designs.
Well, it's interesting that you say that too. I mean, I have 2 points to what you just said too. Is like, first of all, like what you're saying is we want to give just the same amount of excellence and perfect execution to the kid in 6th grade as the person playing in the New York Philharmonics, because the guy in 6th grade could be the next person in the Philharmonic. And in fact, I have Elena Penderhughes. I don't know if you know who Elena is.
No, I don't.
Elena Penderhughes is one of the baddest jazz flute players in the world. She's in the band, was a fairly well-known piano player named Herbie Hancock's band.
I've heard of him.
And yeah, he's pretty good. And she was coming to us when she was 12 years old, and she's playing like crazy when she was 12 years old.
Yeah.
And we knew she was playing with it, and now she's tours the world and she's a star.
Oh,
so,
fun.
I mean, I've seen it in my own career.
Right.
And on top of that, we're talking about how technology progresses the player and everything else. These things are going, the technology of the flute between probably, you'd know better than me, 30 years ago. Now we have Straubinger pads that are faster and you don't have to deal with the changes in temperature. We have, more, better or more efficient designs in embouchure cuts and overcut, undercut, ways to get the oscillation of the air to spin faster. That's all technology too, right, Jeff? I mean, it's,
Yeah, there's been a lot of evolution in the time I've been in the industry. There's been a lot of changes in the positive, forward-moving type of progress that has been driven by, of course, the demands by the musician, but then also the ability of the manufacturers.
Yeah, the execution.
Right. Yeah, because now there's machine tools and there's processes.
Yeah.
Like even in our own shop, we have CNC
I
machine
was gonna
tools.
say that, yeah.
We have 3D printing, which we talked about at length yesterday, and laser, computer-controlled lasers, and all these sort of things that didn't exist in the manufacturing sphere, in the musical instrument products making, when I got into the industry.
Yeah.
So, and because of that, years ago, there was, a definition of instruments that was different than today. So in today, we have so many different levels of instruments, and it used to be, we have
Haynes and Powell.
Yeah, Haynes and Powell at the professional level,
Gemeinhardt.
and then we had Gemeinhardt, Bundy, Armstrong, whatever, at the student level. In some respects now, and I do find this in many instances where in today's student instruments play better than some of yesterday's professional flutes.
I've noticed that. I told you something about that earlier today.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
And so the guys making the professional instruments, the women and men designing them, building them, and crafting them are like, we've got to go
Really
even
step up.
further to differentiate ourselves between that that student an intermediate flute and the
And a
professional
$15,000,
flute.
$20,000 flute. Yeah,
Right,
of course. Yeah.
yeah.
No, it's an amazing thing, and I mean, our viewers probably don't know. I mean, before like CNC machines, and you know more about obviously. What does CNC stand for again?
Computer numerically controlled.
Computer. What he said. So the but you know, they used to do castings out of pouring liquid silver into castings. Not long ago, right?
Sure, yeah.
When I worked for Haynes in 2002. And they were still doing tree castings of keys, man.
Well, there's still some parts that'll be cast, but there's some parts that'll be CNC cut.
Yeah. Oh, they still do.
Pad cups used to be mostly stamped and
Stamped,
formed,
yeah.
and now they're
Mostly
more
CNC.
of them are
Brandon still
cut on the machines.
Brandon still does that
Yeah,
press,
and
right?
some companies do, and you can still make a gorgeous flute
Yeah, sure.
with either method, right?
Yeah.
But the maker builds that into their concept of design.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the execution of that design could come in different forms, but
Absolutely.
it's exciting to see the evolution of the instruments in the time I've been in the trade.
I'm sure. Yeah. I mean, I've seen it too, and I've done less than you. And also we talked about earlier, you know, about the companies wanting consistency, you know, and I think that probably CNC has helped them be more consistent than
Sure.
right, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, there's more.
Absolutely.
Not to take anything away from those. That's another thing. I was talking to your staff earlier, Marcy, who runs the repair department. That I just did this flute right before I came here. It was a Haynes serial number 2000. It was 110 years old. I overhauled it, and it's killing, man. It's a beautiful flute. And they didn't have any CNC machines back then, that's for sure. So it's an
Right.
interesting the evolution. I mean, I feel honored to be do what I do. You know, there's not a lot of. I mean, there is and there's not a lot of us. You know, there's not. On one hand, there's the cats that really know what they're doing. You know.
Well, we really could use more people coming into our profession,
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
Because there's a lot of demand, and actually, when we talk about the elevation of the quality
Yeah.
of the instruments out there, they need elevated level of care and service on the instruments,
Yeah, absolutely.
so that they could be maintained at the level they were
Made
designed
for,
at,
I know.
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that's important that the craftspeople working on the instrument and the people that are hopefully coming into becoming the technicians and so forth, that those people are really geared towards the next level of service of the instruments.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I do notice, you know, that seems to be like kind of, I don't know if people are starting to realize that repair, like, I do see like kind of a next generation of repair people coming up a little bit, you know? I see a little bit more interest in repair. I actually have someone who's going to be, I think, going to be an apprentice for me in September, which I would never, earlier was hesitant to do, but I'm starting to think maybe it's good to have people to keep it, like you do. You have a staff of people that you're training this trade, this
Yeah.
skill, you know?
Yeah, we like to always have an apprentice on staff.
Yeah.
Because we want to, frankly, just invest back into the industry, because
Yeah.
if this industry isn't growing, or our piece of it isn't growing, it's not good. We need a healthy industry out there, and we've got to contribute to making that happen.
No, 100%. And I get asked a lot, like people, you know, people as high schoolers or something. They say, "How do I become a repairman of a flute or a high-end flute or whatever, technician, mechanic?"
Yeah.
It's almost it's kind of a hard answer, but I think the answer is, I got a good answer for it. But you know, there's the answer. You could go to Red Wing. You could kind of do something if you don't have the opportunity. But you know, what I think it really is it's old school. You know, it's apprenticeship. You have to find a master, and you have to learn from a master for a long time.
Yeah.
And you have to be, and hopefully it'll be more than one master. You know, I was really lucky in we're talking about the trajectory of our careers, and I just happened to you know, I don't know, luck or whatever. I was at Berkeley in Boston, and then I left Berkeley to go on the road, and then I was like, what, do I come back or not? And I had like 16 students, and I was playing wedding gigs in Boston, and I was like, this isn't for me. And I looked in the newspaper, and there was a job opening at this place called Burkhardt Flutes. And when I was in high school, I worked at a place called Action Music and Sound, which ironically was like 3 blocks away from Burkhardt Flutes. And I was a repairman in high school, like when I was and I knew absolutely nothing about repair. I just pretended to repair things. In fact, I remember I had a trumpet that had, this is a good story, a trumpet that had a stuck tuning valve, and I knew that if you heated it, it could come out. I overheated it, the whole thing blew up on me. Yeah. But so, long story long, I was lucky to be around masters. So I've come to find out Lillian Burkhardt is one of the greatest flute makers walking planet Earth right now. And at the time, I didn't even know what Burkhardt was. I just knew that I wanted to do this. And I took 3 interviews with Lillian, believe it or not. She kept on being like, has he got it? Has he got it? And then I was lucky. Then I moved to New York. I went on the road and moved to New York. And then I worked for Jeff Weissman for a number of years, who was also a mover and shaker in the industry. And then I was able to work with Chris McKenna, David Chu from Haynes, and worked with Powell. I mean, it was just, I just happened to run into all these cats that were really high level maker, you know. And you have to also be open to learning too. I mean, there's that too, you know. But
in one respect, musicians are pretty well acclimated to the landscape that you're going to experience as a technician, because musicians know how to make steady progress over a very long period of time, and they have their eye on mastery.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And also, to your point about apprenticeships and studying with the masters, you do the same thing with flute. You seek out that person that's, first of all, willing to take you in.
That's true too.
And somebody that's got a reputation for,
high level
for taking people along with them on the ride. And then you might then seek the next master or the next person.
That's a fantastic analogy.
And so musicians are really well built for becoming technicians.
Yeah, absolutely. You know? Well, as a musician, I'm to get deep on musicians, it's a pretty amazing thing on the science level. Musicians are the only people that use both hemispheres of the brain. And that's pretty deep. So when you play music, you're using your right and your left hemisphere of your brain. No other profession does that, because you're using logic and you're using art.
Right.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I hope both of mine work.
Well, the other aspect that takes musicianship into the working on the instruments is kind of working backwards from the end, right? So you've got the result in mind, and then it's all about the steps to get there,
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't know all that steps, or you haven't mastered all the steps to get there.
Yes.
So you need help along the way.
Yeah.
And it takes time to develop the skills. We all start learning how to finger a G.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. We haven't yet played a scale that incorporates the note G.
Yeah.
But then later we learn, pieces of music that incorporate the scales that incorporate G. And you build and build and build.
Yeah, is a C major scale hard to play? Like, it is for my 6-year-old son, But that's definitely, that's tough. And you know what else is really important in our industry is mistakes. For me, at least, I made a lot of mistakes. And you know what? Once I made a mistake...
I've heard about these.
Yeah. they're infamous. But, I think for me, I learn more from my mistakes than from my successes.
Well, that's actually where I think the brilliance of craftsmanship, but also deep experience, comes into the zone of, it's a mistake, now what?
Yeah. Or let's stop now.
Well, that's the most important
Yeah.
thing when I'm working with an apprentice is like, you've got to know when to
to take it good.
Yeah,
Send
yeah,
it to that guy. Yeah, I mean,
because isn't there an instinct many of us have? Maybe a lot of our listeners have the same instinct where you're doing something and you go so far with it and you go, it's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
and you keep going, but it's like we gotta develop the.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And for me, Jeff, there's nothing that makes me more crazy than seeing like a $20,000, whatever, Brandon Brothers, and seeing like, claw marks on the thing from some guy, in Wichita who decided he's gonna. Nothing wrong with Wichita, but that's gonna take the tail, and it's like. That's when you're like, why would you even touch this thing? Yeah, and I see it more than I'd like to see it, where you see people who...
Well, it's important when people get into the trade to have that sort of guidance and mentorship that directs them towards that definition of high-level craftsmanship and what quality means.
Yeah.
And that clearly means leaving no traces.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, of you being there.
Yeah, and taking pride in your work and your standard of excellence is like where's the where is the standard of excellence, and you want it to be as high as you could possibly get it, and for me too, like when I get jobs, so someone comes to me with a flute, right, and they bring me a gold Burkhart flute, and they say, I want a COA. I say, okay, I'll do a COA. And then I look at the flute, and it's got 6 rip pads, the thumb key fells falling off. And I'll say to them, you could do a COA and do 6 rip pads at $550 for the COA, $80 a pad, be an $800 COA, or you just put all new pads and do an overhaul. Or most of the time, if they say no, I just won't do the job, because once I put my name on that flute, my name's on the flute, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So there's not even that it's like an ego thing, it's like literally once my hand is on the flute, the next person that sees it, oh, Luke did that work. And I take that really seriously, man. Like I really do. Like to me that's like, it's about pride in your work and your craftsmanship.
Sure,
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, it's very important for all of us to just have real solid determination around the output of the work, just as the makers do, right?
Absolutely,
so we need to match them. And back to your earlier point about consistency, right? So I think the gentleman I studied under, centuries ago, said something to the effect of consistency is the first ingredient to quality. So he went further in saying that if you could do it consistently bad, like you always get the same thing wrong, you could correct that.
Yeah.
You could just get back on the track, and now all that's corrected.
That's
but if you're doing this right and that wrong, and the next job that comes in, you got this and that. It's like it's all over the place, and there's no way to guide that into the quality zone.
Absolutely. And then there's also the kind of veer off a little bit. I think with special, I guess it could be said for all instruments, but I think flutes is a good one, where just because flutes are they're so true, right? The mechanism's so true. This padding is under, half a thousandth of an inch. And so if you have all these cats out there that are like band repair guys, right? Mm-hmm. And they'll do saxophones, flutes, trumpets, blah, 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 blah. But on a high-end real deal flute, you have to be a flute. You could be a jack of all trades, or you could be a master of one thing, I think. That's how I do it. I'm a saxophone player first. People always want me to fix the saxophones. I want nothing to do with it. Not to say that it's bad or good. It's not good or bad, but I think to focus on one thing it's just like playing their instrument. It's like really dialing into one thing. I think is probably pretty important for these high-end flutes, at least.
Well, the flutes do need a very specialized approach, and there's also, I think, a level of understanding and I'll say patience that's required for flutes that may not
Yes.
be required for other instruments to the same
Especially,
degree.
yeah, not to
Yeah.
put down like brass instruments, but I mean,
Well, my
it's
background.
more smashing around, right?
Well, I don't know. No.
Yeah, I shouldn't say.
So that's what the musicians do. And then-
That's what the flute makers say.
And our job is to unsmash them.
Yeah.
But my background is, I'm a guitar player
Yeah,
that started into the wind instruments, and I was a generalist
yeah. Well, I was too for a while,
originally, and then just over the course of time, I focused and then focused further and focused further and focused further. So I feel very lucky to have had that generalist background
Yeah, absolutely.
to bring to
It
a very narrow focus.
I think it all informs itself too. I mean, I did too. I worked for Wurlitzer Music in Boston too.
Oh, yeah, cool.
Yeah, and I did setups on guitars. If
Uh-huh.
you told me to do one now,
Right.
but of course, I think that maybe that's what I said is a little more. But you know where I'm going with it.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
but I do think that I think that was playing too. I mean, I'm a doubler. Not a doubler of just saxophone and flute, but I play the flute, I play the saxophone, I play the piano, I play the drums, I play the wind controller. And I think I don't play them all at the same level. I try to, but they all inform each other,
Sure.
and I get hung up sometimes on like, should I practice the drums today or should I practice the piano today? Or should I practice that saxophone? I'm always gonna practice the saxophone first, but I think it doesn't really matter that much. I think that if you're playing the drums, it's informing your saxophone playing by getting your rhythm together. You know what I'm saying? So that's probably somehow. I'm taking a left here a little bit, but you get the idea.
Yeah. Absolutely. But it's so interesting how all these different disciplines come into working on a flute.
Yeah.
And because of the preciousness of them, and because of going back to how we talked about the musicians now, how they're so darn good.
I know.
So many of them are so good, and we want to maintain the instruments to that level that really
Absolutely.
continues to inspire them to grow
Absolutely.
as musicians.
I say the analogy a lot of times. I say, you buy a Maserati, you're not going to bring it to Meineke. You're going to bring it to the Cats, and and all these flutes here are all incredible flutes. It's like that's the other thing that we talked about a little bit. It's like you and I have an interesting, experience because I've seen hundreds of. I mean, it's just every single flute. We know every brand, and each brand has its own taste. Its own taste. You know what I'm saying?
I call it personality.
There you go. That's a better
Right?
word, right?
Yeah,
Each
yeah,
one has its
yeah.
own vibe, and they
But-
want it to have their own vibe, right?
But also when you put the musician to the instrument,
yeah, there's got to
now-
be they
Yeah.
got to dial it in.
Yeah,
There's
that's
got to
right.
be the
and hopefully it's a personality that makes a great fit,
Absolutely, and it's wild too, like to see the personalities of the flutes. Like if you put if you played for me right now, Cameron picked up a flute, 2 flutes, and you played a gold Haynes, and you played a Miyazawa.
Mhm.
I can tell you exactly what flute is which. The Miyazawa is going to be much brighter, and the Haynes is going to be darker. Whatever that means. One guy, I love this. Somebody said once, talking about tonality is like dancing to football. But that
like
being
that.
said, they do have, as you know, they have their own tonal
Yeah,
tonal
character.
characteristics.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's this trip. How much? First of all, how much there can be a difference in the tonal experience with the same instrument. It's a flute.
Yeah.
But the makers, as you know, have a lot of different approaches to make the flutes play the way they do.
As it should be.
Absolutely.
And that's.
We want choice, right?
Yeah, that's where, and those choices are things that didn't exist decades ago.
That comes back
Right.
to the technology.
Right.
Well, yeah.
If you wanted a professional instrument, you have a
wait
choice
for-
of 3.
Yeah, and you had to
You
wait 6 years to get
Right,
one.
yeah,
And you didn't get
right.
to pick it. The essential
Right.
one.
You
Yeah.
hope it was as good as the one you
Yeah.
played
Imagine
last
that.
year.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Now we got people like J.L. Smith. You come in here, you can play 90 instruments.
Yeah, well,
But
yeah.
you know, I mean, it's a beautiful thing. But you know, yeah, it's the whole thing is a trip.
Yeah,
really.
yeah. Well, it's fun to be in this business. And
It is.
It's actually really cool to make friends like
I know.
Luke in the business.
There's not a lot
too,
of us
so-
out there.
No, but you
Yeah.
know, we're definitely comrades in arms
Absolutely.
there. So
Yeah, man.
yeah, thanks for the time with
Hey,
me. I
man,
really
thank you for
appreciate
your
it.
hospitality.
Yeah,
It's-
great
you're
to
a
see you.
Gentleman and scholar.
Cheers.
Yeah, man.
All right.
There you go.
Bye, everyone. Good to see you.
Oh, also, we're going to put this on Flute Forum. We want to
Ah.
encourage people to ask us any questions. Both Jeff and I, if you have any questions about what we talked about, or even just any general questions, I think we'll just open it up and we'll
Absolutely.
talk to you.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool.
Thank you, man.
All right.
All right.
See you.